He's been able to get into an awful lot of containers that we did not think he would be able to.
Kobuk's the name, can cracking's the game. Today on This American Land.
This will be the whole enchilada of 150 miles of water trail.
This recreation trail is like no other. You'd better bring your sea legs for this adventure. An underwater robot is helping solve the mystery of dead zones off the Oregon coast. And most landfills are retired with a whimper. We'll show you one taking on a shining new life. All this and more, now on This American Land. Funding for This American Land is provided by the Weiss Foundation, the Turner Foundation, the Daniel K. Thorne Foundation, the Pew Charitable Trust.
Hi, and welcome to This American Land. I'm Bruce Burkhardt.
And I'm Caroline Ravel. We've got some terrific stories ahead about America's natural resources, its landscapes, waters, and wildlife.
These are stories you won't see anywhere else. Our reporters are covering the country looking for people with stories to tell about what's happening to our natural resources, what all of us should know about what's being done and what needs to be done to protect our natural resources for the future.
In our first story, if a rugged day on the water gets your heart pumping, then a unique trail along the coast of Washington is a must-do vacation. Gary Stryker has more about the efforts to protect the Cascadia Marine Trail and make it even more accessible.
They call it serene, soothing, and magnificent. The Cascadia Marine Trail is all these and more. Along the coast in the Pacific Northwest, it's a 150-mile, entirely water-based recreation trail, extending from Olympia, Washington, through the San Juan Islands, up to the Canadian border.
Yeah, you're good.
The trail is a network of 55 shoreline campsites, started over 20 years ago by the Washington Water Trails Association in partnership with state and local authorities.
All right, you ready?
Now there's a bill in Congress to start the process of designating it as a national scenic trail. In Washington, about 83% of the marine shore is privately owned. Designating this as a national scenic trail would help protect the fragile ecology here and guarantee public access. Congressman Jay Inslee introduced the Cascadia Marine Trail Study Bill in 2009.
It will be the first in the nation's history of a fully waterborne trail. There are parts of other trails that have portions, water sections, but this will be the whole enchilada of 150 miles of water trail, where places you can pull out if you want to take a little break.
Supporters of the trail want to have campsites for non-motorized boats and their paddlers every 5 to 10 miles.
If you're not kayaking a lot, you don't really realize how few spots there are that you can camp and you can go with a kayak.
The trail now relies primarily on donor support and volunteer maintenance, and the economic slump has meant a decline in donations and the closing of some campsites.
What I know that we've been losing sites, and that's not okay. Every one is a jewel.
As a designated trail, Cascadia would be supported by federal funds and managed by federal authorities like the National Park Service or the Bureau of Land Management that would coordinate with state and local authorities and use volunteer support where possible. Congressman Inslee says Americans should support his bill regardless of where they live.
It's just like asking why would you care about Yellowstone or Yosemite, just because you're not living there, it doesn't mean that it's not a huge part of everybody's lives.
Supporters of the Cascadia Trail say the designation will ensure that future generations will be lucky enough to enjoy it, like those who paddle it today. For This American Land, I'm Gary Stryker.
The Washington Water Trails Association supports Leave No Trace principles to help reduce the impact of paddling and camping on Washington State's fragile shorelines.
As beautiful as the Cascadia Marine Trail is, oceanographers are trying to understand some disturbing phenomenon far beneath the surface of the Pacific. The cause of several dead zones off the Oregon coast is still a mystery.
Oregon State University scientists are using robotic gliders to do research that humans cannot. Miles O'Brien has the details in our Science Nation report.
It's a little bit bumpy today. We've got the first of the fall storms kind of sweeping through. So we're just going to go out to about 50 meters of water.
Oceanographer Jack Barth has had plenty of bumpy rides off the Oregon coast, launching and retrieving these underwater gliders. From April to October, they gather data to help answer questions about the health of the world's oceans.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Wait for the big swell?
Yeah, big swell.
All right, here we go. Next one. Right now. And the main things we're measuring are temperature, salinity, and importantly, the dissolved oxygen of the water. And that's what tells us how that low oxygen zone looks.
With National Science Foundation funding, Barth is studying low oxygen, or dead zones, which appear each summer off the Oregon-Washington coast.
In 2006, we actually went to zero oxygen in a pretty big area near the bottom, and it extended many miles across the seafloor. And that's when we partnered with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to send a camera down on a remotely operated vehicle. And we got these images of dead crabs everywhere. We saw the sea stars, their flesh actually looking like it was dying and depressing. Worms floating around in the bottom currents. So not only had the fish gone away, but sort of the base of the food web was really being affected.
Worldwide, ocean dead zones now number about 400. The major man-made cause is agricultural runoff from rivers into the ocean. In addition, winds and currents move nutrient-rich but oxygen-poor water from the deep ocean to the coast. Microscopic organisms called phytoplankton thrive but then die, decompose, and the cycle continues. Climate change may also come into play.
We think there's two scenarios that global warming is potentially affecting this. So out in the deeper ocean, there's measurements that show that the oxygen levels are going ever so slightly down with time. When that water's brought to our shore, it's already low in oxygen.
Global warming may also be influencing wind patterns and changing ocean circulation. Barth says these smart robots provide new insight to understand our oceans.
To me, it's opened this whole new view under the sea. I think it's really revolutionized how we can keep a tap on what's going on out there.
For Science Nation, I'm Miles O'Brien.
The Oregon State University gliders measure oxygen content, temperature, salinity, density, and chlorophyll content.
For kids learning about science, the real passion doesn't come from textbooks. It comes from the experiments and interaction with plants and animals that spark the real enthusiasm. You should know something about that. You're a teacher.
Absolutely. In fact, in many cases, the most valuable lessons are the ones that are unplanned. That was the case for some elementary students who learned about invasive species from the crayfish they were studying. Our story is from Oregon Public Broadcasting.
As discoveries go, this one seemed anticlimactic.
You got all sizes of them here, too.
5 years ago, Jeff Adams came to this spot near the town of John Day and found some crayfish, as easily as he trapped more today.
There were hundreds and hundreds of crayfish at one of the sites that we looked at. Just the sheer numbers seemed very odd and out of place.
Other scientists checked his samples and realized these crayfish belong a couple thousand miles away.
Certainly it was a shock to see it up here. It's a well-known species to cause a lot of ecological damage in the upper Midwest, and it's never been found west of the Rockies, west of the Continental Divide. And that's a big concern when you see something hop a Continental Divide and invade a new region.
From Jeff's first spotting in 2005, rusty crayfish have sprinted downstream. They have now colonized 30 miles of the John Day River.
Right now, just kicking through the substrate with the back of my heels, and then the current of water will kind of dislodge the crayfish right into my net.
Professor Julian Olden of the University of Washington has been studying invasive species in the John Day River for several years.
They're pretty thick through here, so it's like a couple kicks. It's pretty much a crayfish under every rock. That's the reality of it. It's a great catch, there's at least a dozen there. This species are native to the upper Ohio River drainage in the Midwestern U.S., but now have been introduced to about 18 states and 2 Canadian provinces, ranging from Ontario and Quebec all the way down to Tennessee.
Oregon's native signal crayfish can appear either bright red or drab green.
The signal crayfish is beautiful brown, olive color, has some nice white spots right on its claw. It's quite beautiful, nice and smooth crayfish.
Rusty crayfish may be green too, but they carry a trademark rust spot on their side. When aquatic invasives move around the country, there's a standard list of usual suspects. Anglers and their boats often give them unintentional rides. But not this time.
Here in the West, there seems to be kind of a unique pathway that hasn't really obtained that much attention. We see a quite different story here. Crayfish are used in the classroom.
And they don't take
You know, they're used in the classroom for a reason. I think they illustrate biological life quite well.
Well, we have the rusty crayfish in the tank right here. I think they're pretty cool. Yeah.
Crayfish are sturdy. They can survive a lot of handling. That makes them good for 4th and 5th graders who are learning about biology, ecosystems, and life cycles.
You can talk about it, you can look at a movie, but it's not the same as actually picking it up and learning how to hold the crayfish and what are the structures and how really unique are they.
Right here, this is where the egg would be if this was a female, but it's a male.
Don't be scared.
The rusty crayfish is one of several crayfish that are shipped around the country to roughly probably 25% of elementary classrooms throughout the United States, between a dozen to 2 dozen in each classroom.
The problem comes when the school year ends. What should they do with their living specimens?
Often it's done very innocently. Most people feel that the best thing to do is to return plants and animals to nature where they came from. This is Dixon Creek. This is the main creek in Corvallis. And it's also a creek where at least flows through the backyards of 4 different elementary schools.
Dixon Creek now has invasive crayfish. Dr. Sam Chan of Oregon State says the schools that back up to the creek are very likely the source. Every time a red swamp crayfish from Louisiana or a rusty crayfish from the upper Midwest comes head to head with Oregon's native signal crayfish, the signal loses. At Franklin School in Corvallis, Jennifer England has been teaching with live animals for 15 years.
Skim and see if you can find something about how to care for them.
It was only 3 years ago she learned that supply companies were shipping her an invasive species. Fortunately, she had never dumped live animals in streams.
They would use their back tail and they would flap it back and forth.
Experts at Oregon State suggested this could make a good lesson for her kids.
It blossomed, it grew immensely and became quite a good project.
They will eat the fish eggs that are in the rivers, and they will also kick the native crayfish out of their habitats.
They'll go in there and they'll just take over their homes, and then they'll normally destroy them, and then they can't find any place to go, and so the natives will die off. And then
Their students are learning about invasive species while learning about science.
After caring for their crayfish for months, the children often aren't wild about killing them. But they're learning that may be the only responsible option.
I don't think he likes it. You should put him back in the water so he can exhale.
Sometimes we just wait until they just die of old age. We actually put them in a bag and put them in the freezer. And so that was a very painless way for them to go. We didn't have to put them out into the ecosystem that we have over here.
Wildlife officials say it's against state and federal law to ship these crayfish into Oregon or Washington. Oregon wildlife officials sent warning letters a couple of years ago to the major supply companies. The shipments have continued, but officials have not chosen to aggressively enforce the law. A couple of years ago, even Professor Olden discovered how easy it was to obtain an illegal shipment of invasive crayfish.
And that was probably the most shocking moment, a box full of non-native crayfish that we just got, delivered right to our door.
He traced crayfish shipments to schools near the John Day River, too. Now this river has at least 30 miles of invasive crayfish. Only distance and time stand between here and the Columbia River.
You can contain fish by using electrical barriers, like they do in some systems in the Midwest, but there's no way of containing crayfish in large river systems like this.
5 years ago, on this stretch of river, Jeff Adams found only one rusty crayfish.
Yesterday, when I got back here for the first time in 5 years, for the second my foot hit the water, I probably saw 30 or 40 scatter away. So it's a pretty dramatic difference.
Since crayfish shipments continue to classrooms, Northwest scientists will focus their efforts on teaching the teachers and their children.
Yeah, these have little hairs on their feet to feel it.
Just can't release animals that are in your care into the surrounding waters, because once they're there, particularly in water, you just can't get rid of them.
Rusty crayfish eat twice as much as other crayfish. On their menu, small fish, worms, snails, leeches, clams, and fish eggs.
Most of us don't think much about our garbage. Once we've wheeled the cans to the curb, it's off to the landfill somewhere.
So what happens when a landfill is full? In Atlanta, there's something new under the sun. The Hickory Ridge facility isn't being retired. It's taking on a new life as a solar farm. Marsha Walton has our story.
Just south of Atlanta, solar energy is on a roll.
By using it on a landfill that would otherwise be wasted space, and we're really reinventing the wheel here.
These huge rolls of flexible solar panels will cover about 10 acres of the now full 48-acre Hickory Ridge landfill. It will be one of the biggest producers of solar power in Georgia.
Traditionally, when a landfill's full, the surface of the landfill is lined with a clay material that's put in place and tested, and then covered with a liner, and then covered with grass.
When landfills close, they have to be monitored for 30 years.
These panels here are
Since 2008, Republic Services' Andy Keith has worked on an innovative plan for this landfill's future. Instead of growing grass, how about producing electricity?
We're actually going to cover with solar panels from about here over here, the southern and western portions. As far as the waste industry goes, this is a major shift in thinking from the landfill being a wasted space to it being a very much usable space.
A smaller test facility in San Antonio, Texas, helped work out some bugs for this much larger project. More than $2 million in federal stimulus money helped launch this project, and it's brought about 36 jobs. So how do these panels work?
The black stripe you see there is a strip of geotextile, which is used to protect the bottom of the liner from any rocks or pebbles or dirt. They're about the thickness of 2 nickels stacked together, about 1/4 inch, and they're covered with Teflon plastic, which is a durable material. Here are the electrical connections to each panel. I think each one of these produces 20 volts. These are produced in such a way that if one of these squares goes bad, the rest of them will continue to work. Monitored on-site and off-site by a telemetry system.
Environmental groups like the Georgia Sierra Club welcome a switch to renewable energy for the state.
Currently, we get about 63% of our electricity from coal-fired power plants, which take a huge toll on our air, land, and water. And so projects like this, are the beginning of really what we would like to see in terms of solar and offshore wind powering the state.
When the panels are operational, they will power several hundred homes. But long term, could other aging landfills take on such a productive second life? The waste industry is taking a close look, and the National Renewable Energy Lab is evaluating some 11,000 landfills and abandoned industrial sites as possible locations for wind turbines and solar panels.
The thing that's cool about renewable energy and distributed solar generation is that it really has the potential that everyone can see and touch and feel it, and people can take their power production into their own hands.
Millions of acres of idle land could become a powerful new source of energy. For This American Land, I'm Marcia Walton.
French physicist Edmond Becquerel discovered in 1839 that photovoltaic materials could convert light energy into electrical energy.
If you really want to meet some garbage experts, just ask a grizzly bear. They've been breaking into garbage cans since humans invented them.
But humans and bears don't interact well in the wild. Time now to meet a bear called Kobuk, whose job it is to keep a lid on close encounters of the bear kind. Here's Gary Stryker.
These grizzlies have a job to do, a job that saves lives. They're professional can crackers. Garbage cans and food containers have to make it past these inspectors to be officially certified as bear resistant.
Kobuk, he's quite a challenge. He's very intelligent and powerful. This is one of our lids, the damage that he's done.
An Alaskan grizzly weighing some 600 pounds, Kobuk lives at the Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center in West Yellowstone, Montana, with his sister, Nakina. All the bears living in this wildlife sanctuary test containers, but Kobuk, nicknamed Kobuk the Destroyer, is the toughest inspector. That's according to Bill Lavelle from the Living with Wildlife Foundation, which oversees the testing and certification.
He's been able to get into an awful lot of containers that we did not think he would be able to.
Kobuk's latest task is to retest this garbage can. Tested a month ago, it lasted for 50 minutes before failing. To win certification, a container must go a full hour without a bear breaking in.
This is a very different type of can, very unique.
Made here in Prescott, Arizona, this 95-gallon container is designed so that a garbage truck can empty it without a worker having to leave the vehicle.
This is called a fully automated container. It's currently locked right now. Truck comes up, grabs the container, hits these paddles, unlatches, tips the container, sets the container back down, it relatches, and it's bear resistant once again. It's a good product, so we'll see how it does.
Lavelle works closely with the Discovery Center's manager, Randy Gravatt. They're baiting this container with Kobuk's favorite foods.
We have some peanut butter, we have some fish, and we have some dry dog kibble.
Again, I like to put the nice gooey stuff on latches, hinges.
It doesn't take much to keep Kobuk interested.
What is different with him, when he reaches that frustration level, he will literally walk away and then think about it, or so it appears anyway, and then come back 5-10 minutes later and just beat up the container.
Designing a bear-resistant container is a first for this company and for designer Reed Davis.
When the animal gets to it, unless that bear is really big and he can grab this can from behind it and squeeze these pedals himself and then have his friend lift the lid, he will not be able to open it.
But what if the bear tips it over?
So we've designed these lock mechanisms with a moving ball. So when it tips past approximately 45 degrees, it disables the locks so that when these paddles are then pushed, nothing happens. They can push on it all day and it will not open.
Kobuk does his work in front of visitors, demonstrating the importance of keeping bears out of garbage. It's a lesson that saves lives. Once bears get a taste for garbage, they can become aggressive toward people and often must be killed for public safety. So Kobuk is helping keep his wild relatives out of trouble. But what's the incentive for this private business?
It actually is not as small of a market as what you would think. All through the Rockies, from California up to Canada, Alaska, and also across the top of the U.S. And believe it or not, there's even black bears that create issues in New Jersey and even in Florida.
Kobuk has been at this container for more than 50 minutes.
This is usually the part where I get pretty antsy. You get down to the wire and it's really, really close, and it's like, oh man, especially when he's worked it this hard. Good.
But this time, the container wins. Now certified, these containers will start hitting the streets. This fully automated design will give communities a new tool to take out the trash and to reduce human-bear conflicts. As for Kobuk, his work here is done. For This American Land, I'm Gary Stryker.
One of the stories we're working on for an upcoming show.
I didn't know what it was that had hit the windshield. All I knew is glass exploded and this thing was screaming.
Talk about a tough American hero. We'll show you a bald eagle that survived a horrendous accident with the help of some quick-thinking humans.
Thanks for joining us for This American Land. Every week, we'll bring you original stories on important issues affecting America's natural landscapes, waters, and wildlife. We'll see you next time.
For more information about this program, visit thisamericanland.org. Funding for This American Land is provided by the Weiss Foundation, the Turner Foundation, the Daniel K. Thorne Foundation, the Pew Charitable Trusts,